and yeah, we're good to go.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk shooting free. Let me give you a little background on how what my thought process is on this. So, um, and just particularly on the commercial side, because obviously no one's going to most likely shoot a wedding for free as a normal thing. But on the commercial kind of portrait side, would I take a job for free? Yes, I would, and the reason I would be a couple things. If it's something particular as far as the setting or the location or the subjects or the lighting or the style, any of that kind of thing that's very appealing to me, that would get me interested. Obviously, of course, if it was a particular charity or organization I support, I'd also be willing to do it in that regard. So, of course, those are the easy things. It's some sort of creative thing that I have control over that I wouldn't normally, or it's some sort of basically in-kind contribution to an organization. The question though is like, what happens when it's not one of those things, or it's a little bit less of one of those things? Should you shoot those for free? I will on occasion, and I won't on occasion, and it kind of gets to one of those things where it's like you've got you could have like two customers asking for pretty much the same thing at the same time. We both need a shoot. We don't have no budget. Would you do this? And for whatever reason, one of them you might say yes, and the other one you might say no, just based on what you're hearing. But I will look at it in terms of not just the particulars of the shoot. Are they interesting enough to me on some level? But what can I do with those images afterwards? And I think a lot of people don't think past that point. They stop at the, hey, this would be a great opportunity to really try that new softbox I got, or those new lights, or some new Photoshop thing. And they don't look at it in terms of how can they kind of parlay that into other things. So, for example, recently I've done a couple car shoots for free. Just people I know that have, funky cars or something cool about it. I'm by no means an automobile photographer, but it was kind of like a little passing interest that started late last year. The ones I have done, I've done specifically with the idea of building a little collection of images that I can then go to somebody else and say, here's the stuff I've done. Now would you hire me to do these? Kind of a deal. So it's always from the perspective of, yeah, and Popo in the chat room says talking about personal work. It is personal work in a way, because it's your decision to shoot. It's based totally on kind of like what's going on in your head and what kind of creative thing you've got going. But you can look at it from the perspective of what can I do with these images afterwards, whether it's collecting them to go get additional shoots with later, or putting them together in some sort of like mini site or portfolio kind of book project. There's a couple things that you can do with them down the road. So stock is another thing, although it's probably not as big as anything. It's not the biggest thing out right now as far as that goes. But what about you, Dustin? Have you done anything where it's like, hey, we don't have much of a budget? Are you still interested?
In my experience, it's obviously the benefits of doing something like portrait work or weddings is going to be very different from doing commercial work. But I think the end goal is always to be able to have something to show for it, and whether it's in cash or whether it's a portfolio builder. And I would say that it's in the very beginning, you definitely I think people can smell the green on you when you're first getting started, because they it's almost like they're able to just target you out of the ether. They come forward and they say, you're relatively new and we don't have much of a budget for our wedding, but this could be they always start out with, oh, this could be a great portfolio builder for you, or all this other stuff, and that should definitely pull up some red flags. My experience when it comes to working for free is, if the people come to you explicitly looking for quote-unquote trade work, or because it's going to be good for your experience level or your portfolio or whatever, you can't just look at what is the upfront face value of the services that you're willing to offer for free, because a lot of times in my experience, those people tend to be a lot more work than what they're worth. If they're already bargain hunting, then chances are, much like with other types of work, once you've shot the wedding, you're not done there. You've got to process all those images. If there's any additional products and stuff that they want to order from you at a later time, um, then that's even more work that you're going to be doing with that client. And I think you really have to kind of gauge it based off of you know um, what do you sense as far as that person's personality goes. Do they seem like they're going to be easy to work with, or are they going to make a lot of trouble for you? Because um, these all have to go into play when you think about how much time you're actually dedicating to that client. um, for example, I was approached by a couple, and they came across as being very well to do, and they were getting married in a destination wedding in Jamaica. And I had not done a wedding overseas yet, and so they approached me on the idea of, hey, we're doing this wedding. However, we noticed on your website you really don't have a lot of like destination weddings and stuff, but we really like your style. Um, you know, if we paid you X amount of dollars, would you be willing to come and shoot our wedding? Well, at the very beginning, I was really excited. But then as time went on, I realized that these people were going to be more work than what was probably going to what I could tell for up front at the beginning. However, I went ahead and took the job because I did want to be able to say, that I was also a destination wedding photographer. Um, and sure enough, as the process went on, especially when it came to designing the wedding album and ordering prints and everything else, they ended up becoming much more work than what I originally anticipated. And it was one of those things where I kind of felt like I was continuously being strung along. But at the same time, when I was there, I never put my camera down. I was there for 4 days, and I took pictures of everything, even stuff that wouldn't really technically be considered wedding photography. I was taking just landscape photos and tourist type pictures and stuff for myself and stuff for future projects. I wore my camera out while I was there, making the most of every single minute I could. Just on the fact that I was going to tap out only so much when it came to benefiting from this wedding, as far as the wedding industry goes. So, and then when it comes to portraits and headshot clients and stuff like that, I've never had a situation where someone came forward and said, "Hey, I'll let you shoot me for free, and you'll have extra portfolio stuff to tell for it." I just never had that situation. I mean, let's say if like Barack Obama called me up and said, "Hey, I need a headshot while I'm in town for South by Southwest. Don't tell anybody." But I can't pay you because the company's in trillions of dollars in deficits. Um, so I haven't had that situation happen yet. If someone of notoriety were to come forward and say, "I like your work, I want to work with you, but I'm not going to pay you for it," and this person was extremely well known, then yeah, I'd probably take it. It would definitely be something that I probably wouldn't spend more than 2 hours of my time on. Um, but
Yeah.
you
I
know,
think this, especially on the wedding side, because you talked about the wedding thing. Um, I used to hear a lot when I was doing weddings that, and you'll still see it today, that photographers will complain, and rightfully so, that when they're working with a couple, it always seems like the photographer is the one that's open to negotiation as far as the couple is concerned. The catering and the venue and all that sort of thing have their set rates, whatever they are, and for some reason they feel like the photographer can be, kind of nickeled down a little bit um, to meet what they want. And it reminded me of this phrase I had heard that kind of stuck with me, which was, you can be free and you can be expensive, but never be cheap. Never be like that kind of middle ground thing. If it's something you're passionate about and they don't have a budget, and after looking at everything you see a value in it, whether it's being used down the line for something or just a personal value to you, then shoot it for free. And otherwise, your goal is to get your rates up over time and establish yourself that way, but never be in that kind of in between thing where it's like, well, I know you normally charge $1,000, and I definitely don't want to do it for free, but I can only give you like $100. Will you still do it? And that kind of puts you in this weird kind of quandary thing of like, well, might as well just be free in that situation.
Yeah, I definitely think that it all kind of goes back to making sure that you are taking everything into account when it comes to figuring out how much of your time is being spent on, producing the final product for this client, and is the portfolio benefit or the notoriety benefit or the experience benefit that you're getting out of it equal, if not overvalue, what you're putting into it. Because as we continue on in this discussion, I think eventually what's going to happen is we're going to segue into how doing work for free definitely overall devalues the products and services that we offer in the photography industry, and what that does to our local area as well as statewide and nationally. Um, I was very For example, I was very thankful that someone, I don't know who, but somebody started a Texas Photogs group on Facebook. And it was really interesting because it now allowed, it wasn't just based on like Austin, it allowed people from different areas like San Antonio and Dallas and Houston to actually openly discuss what they charged. Someone started a post that says, "Hey, I'm in Dallas, but I'm thinking about starting to do weddings in Austin. Here's what our base prices start at, or average wedding packages start at in Dallas. What does the pricing market look like in Austin?" And it actually opened my eyes a little bit and made me realize that Austin, is still kind of behind when it comes to the average price that people are charging to shoot weddings compared to the rest of the state. Um, and I personally believe that that's because we have a surplus of talent here in Austin, and the ratio of good photographers to the number of brides that we have in Austin is much higher than, say, what they've got in Dallas, Houston, or San Antonio. Um, and therefore, everybody is so good here in Austin that the last thing they have to compete with is based on price. So I think that when there's a lot of people out there that are doing stuff for free for magazines on a regular basis, not just because it was a first time deal or whatnot, that creates an issue where now the magazines expect a lot of the professional photographers in Austin to do work for them for free just for the sake of being published in a magazine. Um, and with that particular um, let's see, Deb here says, seems to me that advertised lower pricing hurts more than making a side deal for free. I think that's a really good point, Deb. I think that instead of advertising that you're cheaper, once you get them into the negotiation process, then be willing to talk to them about cutting them a deal or offering them a free parents album or something like that, so that way they feel like they're getting some value out of it rather than just advertising to the world that you're just a cheapo.
There is like a real kind of thing about being in a magazine and getting that that credit. And now I've, if I even hear the word, we'll give you a photo credit, that to me is like an instant. I'm not gonna interested in that. But the magazine thing is interesting when you talk about shooting for free repeatedly for magazines and who would do that. I think you get to a point where you honestly you just don't really care anymore about. It's like at first you're really worried. You're like, I want to get in this magazine and I want these clients, and so you'll put in extra effort and extra time, much more than you're getting paid, especially on like editorial work. And then over time you start to value your work and your contribution to what they're doing, and if you feel like you're not getting paid what you should, then it's okay to turn that stuff down. It's almost like we have this innate thing where we have to take every job that pays something, and even if it doesn't.
Yeah.
Just for the potential of working with somebody that now we already know doesn't really pay, and thinking that they will at some point later.
I think just kind of as an example to show how a lot of us have been brainwashed is I did a shoot for a local magazine that deals in food, and I love working with them, but they've always treated me very fairly, and they've always paid me based on what they can afford within their budget, and I've always made sure that not that I try to only shoot what they're willing to pay, but still do a good job while I'm doing it, but don't kill myself trying to do it for what they're willing to pay. and they were really excited about one of the images that I took for them, that they wanted to use it for the cover. And so they sent me another quote, and that quote was slightly less than the original quote they sent me after they said they wanted to use it for the cover. And my original instinct was, oh, well, then I guess they're going to pay me less, but they're going to put my picture on the cover because that's going to add value to my picture, and that's the way they're going to pay me, is by having me be on the cover. So I was still kind of unsure, so I emailed them. I said, wait, is this 150, like, are we changing now what you were going to pay me originally, or what? And she's like, no, 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 that's in addition to what we originally quoted you. So you get what we originally quoted you for the job, and you're going to get this additional amount on top of it because you're going to be the cover. But I had been so brainwashed into thinking that the idea of just getting some sort of publicity out there was going to be a direct turnaround for monetary compensation, or a substitute for monetary compensation. And I think that a lot of people out there have kind of been brainwashed into thinking along those lines as well. And
Yeah.
because of that, now everybody thinks that, all the magazines have been trained to think, okay, well, we're in Austin, or we're in New York, or we're in Los Angeles, and why pay someone like Jeremy Cowart so many, so much money to do this shoot when we can find somebody who's okay, and they'll probably do it for free.
Right. I think also on this, when we talk about like kind of not falling for that trap of free all the time, or less than your worth, I want to put a little caveat in there that doesn't mean that you shouldn't establish relationships with these people and maintain those. So, for example, I've had people that have asked me for just standard kind of headshot stuff for them, and I was a little bit more expensive than they were willing to pay, but we keep in touch, and then soon they might recommend somebody to me. So I'm never like a burn bridges type. If you're underpaying what I think you should, then I'm not going to talk to you anymore. It's not like that. It's just a situation where I want to keep that relationship going, because it's really interesting. Sometimes you'll find people that don't have much of a budget, but they associate with people who do, and those people will need work eventually. So always keep the relationships going, I guess, is what I would say.
And I think you kind of brought up a good point there. Beyond just what someone is willing to pay you, or how much notoriety you're going to get from that particular shoot or experience, you have to be able to look, okay, what could this client relationship hold for me in the future? That kind of segues into the idea of doing composite, or not composite shoots, I'm sorry, but collaboration shoots. For example, with other wedding vendors. Several times I've done shoots where I'm not getting paid, but we have a model who will show up for free. We have someone who donates a wedding dress, a nice one, a current wedding dress, a hairstylist and makeup artist, a florist, and a venue. And everybody's willing to pitch in for the purpose of doing a photo shoot that has the potential to be published on some sites like Style Me Pretty or Grace Ormond, as an inspiration board for future brides. And that's something where it's the best thing that I can come up with is that you're actually turning your time into advertising dollars. A lot of people, especially in small businesses, advertising can get really expensive, and therefore it can really eat away at your budget. So a lot of times, if you're not doing anything with your camera at that time, if it's during a slow season, pick up your camera and go shoot something and turn that into a form of marketing. That in of itself, I think, kind of recategorizes, what are we really doing for free? Are we really getting something out of it? I think
Right.
marketing is definitely one of the biggest assets, and if you're not getting some kind of marketing out of it, then you might want to reevaluate your situation.
Yeah, and on that kind of that idea of bringing of collaboration. So don't on the magazine side, at least on this area, don't feel like it's like, well, I'm waiting for someone to call me until they if they need something. There are photographers out there who've been very successful at pitching ideas to magazines for stories that they want to run. So you go in there and say, hey, I've got this idea for a local Austin story and X, Y, and Z, and here's how I would shoot it, and here's what we could bring in. And then now you're like beyond just the hired gun. You're actually a collaborator with the magazine before you even got a job. In fact, I would do that if I was just having a meeting with them. It was the first time I met with them. I'd go in there and have like a list of kind of suggestions or ideas of ways that we could work together beyond just the call me if you need anything approach. So in the remaining time we have, let's move over a little bit and talk a little bit, because you mentioned about industry overall, working for free and the effect on that. What do you see as like the lasting impact, if there is one, of free work? Has it really gone any different than it was, say, 10 years ago, or what do you think?
Well, I would definitely say that because of social media and just the amount of access we all have with each other on an immediate basis, I think it's like a slippery slope. It could definitely go the wrong way, because if word gets out that you did something on the cheap for one particular entity, then it's very easy for that to get out, and therefore kind of pave the way for you to end up being the cheap guy. And unfortunately, that's definitely two obvious negative results. One, you've painted yourself as the cheap guy, and two, you've slowly started to decline the overall average that in your area that photographers are willing to charge for their services rendered. But I think another thing that one of our watchers on the website, Popo, Popo, I'd use your real name if I knew what it was, but he'd said that the magazines are in a business, and so are you, and they have their advertising rates that they're going to charge you, and they're not usually going to be that flexible on them unless you buy an ungodly amount of issues to be advertised in. So why should you be bending over backwards for your services for them just to get your work on paper? And many times in meetings and as well as on our site here, people have said it over and over again. The key to kind of getting the respect that you deserve is to have confidence in the prices that you charge. Yeah, you may start out cheaper than others. Eventually, you're going to build up your rates to a point that's acceptable for you and supports the kind of lifestyle you want to have. But when you're doing stuff for cheap, you have to stop and think about, well, are the benefits I'm getting out of this going to be enough to support continuously the lifestyle that I want to live, or am I just bringing down the industry as a whole and telling magazines or other clients that photographers are just willing to do almost anything for a ham sandwich?
Yeah, and then it's like when you toss in the whole thing about your pricing, doing this cheap thing plus free plus expensive, then your prices are all over the place, and you can't. It's like you have no sort of baseline. What does a shoot cost me for a headshot session? Well, sometimes it costs $100, sometimes it's free, and sometimes it's $1,000, and you have no kind of like bearing on your overall pricing and whether or not you're even you might be in a market that would pay $2,000 for it, but you don't know because you're not continuously testing that. You're kind of jumping all around. And you have no baseline for where your pricing is or where it should be. For those of you guys, I really recommend that if you are watching this at a later time, or even if you're watching it in the Hangout currently, one of the great things about our show is we have a live stream chat room on our website at photog.tv, and it's really wonderful to see all of the discussions that go on during the show, because some of the ideas that people are discussing are just phenomenal. Several of the ones I'm going to pull from here, AJ Schroland said, the problem is, newbies, people that are new to the industry need to be taught how to value their work. And then one of our consistent fans, Deb, she said, the problem with them is that
A lot of people are getting into the photography business before they're ready, before they even stop to think about the fact that they're actually running a business, not just shooting pictures because they like shooting pictures. And and I think it's the same thing with any industry that just because you like a monkey wrench doesn't mean immediately that you're a plumber. And so maybe you need to learn about how to run a decent plumbing business before you just run out there and say that you're a plumber. Unfortunately, photography industry doesn't have as many requirements and certifications and regulations as being a plumber does. So anybody with a camera can come out and say that they're a photographer. And that's great. The more talented people that we have out there, the better. But, we all have to realize that we are a part of a community that affects one another. And the minute you tell someone outside of our community, such as a magazine or editorial, agency or something like that, that you're willing to do something for free, you're basically, devaluing everybody else's work from the community that you say you belong to.
Yeah, and I thought when you talked about learning how to run that business is more than just getting the camera. It's almost like they don't new what new people lack the most, or a lot of what they lack is how to interact with people that want to hire them, and how to deal with the questions of pricing when it comes up, when you're in a meeting and they try right then say, well, I've only got this much. You feel like this, and this happened to me before. It's like you get like this, what you're going to charge, and then they're like, well, we only get this much. And now you're sitting there and you're like, well, I've got to make some sort of, I feel like I have to make some sort of snap decision. Do I want to take this job or not? And I've gotten much better now about saying, okay, well, let me think on that, or let me, look up some information and get back to you. Don't ever feel like you have to decide something right then, because that's really what they want you to do. And it's not so much that they're being mean about it, or trying to trick you per se. But I've always said, hey, I'm gonna go back and work through some numbers, and then get back to them on that, because you need time to think, to figure out, okay, well, not just is this shoot worth what they want to pay, but all the other factors that play into it. How much do I need to make on this shoot, and how much time is it going to take based on whatever new information I just got. So it is a kind of like a personal relationship development that people need to do, and that's a continual thing that doesn't seem to ever go away. Doesn't seem to be mastered, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, and that's that. That brings up a good point. You have to stop and think about the fact that if you don't see value in your work, why the heck would your clients see it? And therefore, if you're not willing to stand up for what your prices are, then you're basically paving the way to let them walk all over you. And nobody wants to run a business that way. We all want to be in charge of our own businesses. We don't want to be run by our business. And you want to love what you do. You want to enjoy doing work. You want to enjoy photography, and you'll end up hating it if you are consistently letting people take advantage of you over it. I think having confidence in your pricing is crucial, and it's not just so that you can say what you're worth, but also because if you stand up for what your prices are and you believe that there is value in it, then that translates directly across to your clients, so that if you are cutting them a deal, they're much more likely to be grateful for the fact that you were willing to be flexible on your pricing, rather than just expecting that you would be willing to bend your pricing for them.
Right.
It's not like God just walked into your consultation room because he wants you to shoot his wedding. It's nothing like that. These are normal people just like you and me, and maybe they have a particular budget they're trying to work with.
By telling them that you need to go think about this or whatever, it really gets across the fact to them that yes, you have a business that you've put thought into, that you continually look at your numbers and all of that, and you treat it as such, and not that it's a on the fly kind of a process for you, and they'll respect that. One question I saw from someone named Photographer in the chat room was, could you write off your expenses for these kind of free shoots? And absolutely, it's just would be, I would put it down as like marketing and advertising expenses. Now that being said, it's not gonna really make a big difference in your overall taxes or anything like that. But yes, you could you could do that, and I have done it before. If I will, for example, sometimes come up with like a shoot idea. Nobody's going to hire me to do this particular shoot. It's just something I want to do, and so I'll sketch it all out, and then it'll all just be marked that way as like a kind of marketing / advertising expense. So totally.
Well, I think the main lesson today for those of you that are watching and for those of you that are watching at a later time is the fact that we are part of a community, whether you want to recognize it or not. We're not living in caves, even though we do sit at our computers a lot during the daytime. The way you present yourself when you're talking and meeting with clients, you're doing it on behalf of all of us, whether you realize it or not. And if you want to kind of use the karma approach when it comes to this whole situation, the idea really is that the sort of persona that you present to your clients is kind of the image that you are creating for all of us to the public. So really think about that when you're thinking about how you are willing to negotiate your prices and the kind of image that you are creating, not just with your camera, but with your words and with the way you charge your clients. Because what we do affects everybody in this community. That's why we do this show. It's why we have conventions like WPPI and Photo Plus and Photoshop World, because we're all connected in some way, and we want to make sure that we're all doing it for the right reasons.
All right, I'm going to end on two funny notes here that just came across the chat room. Popo says that wearing an expensive watch helps when meeting with clients. I would agree with that. I would completely agree with that. And Deb says that Dustin represents all of us, so he might need to get a haircut. And I also agree with that.
Well, for those of you guys that haven't, I'm just announcing it now. I'm growing it out so that eventually I can have it cut off, and that way, if Eric needs any emergency hair, he's got.
Yeah, that's true. We might as well just set up like a little runner to bring some over every day. That would be great.
All right. So who do we have lined up for next week, Eric?
Let's see. That would be the.
Let's see, because I know we got some.
That's the first.
March 1st. Yeah, it's already going to be March.
Is that that's not Kenna? Is that the 8th?
I think Kenna's on the 8th. For those of you that do not know Kenna is part of the Creative Live team, and she will be our special guest for March 8th. So that's definitely an episode you do not want to miss. If you guys are familiar with Creative Live, you know how amazing they are as an online classroom for photographers. And for those of you who are not, we definitely recommend that you check them out.
Oh, it's Maria.
Maria Quibon?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I believe she's the one that's slated for next week. Okay.
So, yeah, Eric always gets on my back about, really bending time, space, fabric, reality when it comes to Photog TV, because some of the guests that I have may not directly be photographers, but I believe that Maria is a really interesting character. She's kind of pioneering the Hangouts feature from Google+. She's an anchor for My Fox 11 in Los Angeles, and they've made a regular routine of bringing in celebrities that they interview on the show, and then once they finish the interview on the show, she brings them over to her computer and they do a live hangout. For those of you that may have saw on Facebook, I actually got to sit in with a hangout with Matt Atchity from Rotten Tomatoes. It was, I think, the Wednesday or Thursday before I took my daughter to go see The Secret World of Arrietty. So I actually got to ask Matt Atchity from Rotten Tomatoes what he thought of that movie, because I'm a big Studio Ghibli fan, and he said it was absolutely amazing. It almost brought him to tears. So I was sold on going to see that movie with my daughter afterwards. So Maria is a fantastic hostess, and I think just getting to know like how they do hangouts and how things go in the news anchor room, and maybe get a few questions in there about equipment and stuff like that too, might be really interesting for us. So it's not exactly photo related, but she's definitely got a lot of followers on Google+, and I think she'd definitely be a fun person to have.
No, that will be an interesting one for sure. I'm looking for that. Looking forward to that. We'll just ask her one photo question, like, have you ever taken a picture before? And then we've got that requirement out of the way.
And for all you ladies, yesterday she had the idiot brother from True Blood, the guy from Australia. I can't remember his name, but he was on the show yesterday. in their hangout, so you could actually like chit chat with him. So apparently he's really ripped, and a lot of women gush over him. So he won't be on the show, but Maria will, and she's gorgeous. So
maybe she can hold a picture of him for all.
Yeah, be like, see this, come watch our show. So
yeah.
Anyway, we're just building the community one hangout at a time. Everybody, thank you very much for attending the show today. If you feel like our show has some merit or value to it, please reshare it with your followers, reshare it with your friends, plus one us on Google+, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and just help us get the word out.
If you are watching via the on-air feature, or you're watching via the website and you want to be part of the hangout, you just be sure to circle Photog TV, the page. There's a Photog TV account. Don't circle that. Circle the actual page, because right now we are running the hangout from that account, and only people that have circled that page can be invited to the hangout the way Google Plus works.
Well, I'll go ahead and wrap it up. So everybody, thank you very, very much, as always, for participating in the show and watching from the website as well as from Google+. And for those of you guys on watching on YouTube, hopefully if we got this thing working right, it should be posted on YouTube within a couple of hours. We would definitely like it if you went to our YouTube page and liked our video and commented on it. Plus, we're always open for ideas on special guests or topics to discuss. So you can definitely message them to us on Google+, or you can email us directly at photogtv@gmail.com.
Thanks a lot, everyone. See you next week.
Have a great day, guys. Be nice to each other.